Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, you guys. How you doing? Welcome to Wednesday, the 16th of the first year of the month, January, in the year of your Lord, 2013. I had said Chris Potter would be here today. I lied. I actually found out immediately after telling you that he is actually having to work as a reporter this morning, much to my shock. And he will come and visit us on Friday and delight us with his usual wit and wisdom. So it's you and me, and in between you and me, we will also be talking to Helen Gerhardt, who is part of the organization whose name I am absolutely blanking on right now that focuses on the outrageous lack of funding for public transportation in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in which we reside. Okay. As you know, the big news of the day is that the president will be speaking shortly before noon. And obviously, after this program leaves the air, on his ideas of what he wants to do to try to make the first small step to get a handle on our outrageous gun fetish in this country. And he hasn't said a word, and you can see how ugly this one's going to get. As a matter of fact, I mean, there are some people who are actually expressing alarm and fear because some of the verbiage on, let's say, the opposition side to gun control is becoming so incendiary that it's almost as if, well, it's not even almost as if. I mean, if you troll around on the margins, there are calls actually for armed insurrection. In fact, who was that Flake? Maybe her name was Flake. What? Wasn't there a woman whose name was Flake? Sharon Flake? No. Who was that idiot who had said she was a Wiccan, who was blah, 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 ran for elected office? Oh, why am I blanking on her? Damn it. Where's Sokolowski when I need him saying, when neither of us can remember anything? Anyway. Fluke? Oh, Fluke. Fluke is the one that was, yeah. Okay, so what do I know? Anyway, she had said something about armed insurrection or something when she was a candidate. It was one of the things that was pointed at as showing that she was just off the rails. But you hear that kind of talk on right-wing talk radio now. It's not shocking to hear it. You hear it on some of the conservative talk shows. It's really something. It's really something. So I don't know. We could be, the loons who do not recognize the election of Barack Obama, who do not even recognize him as a fellow American. Those kind of loons, there are millions of them. Let's not kid ourselves. There are millions of them. And these are the people who, since his reelection, have openly tried to secede from the Union. These are the people who talk about insurrection. They are, the pushback on this is going to be incredible because there's a whole bunch of Americans who, as we know, live in another universe. And in their universe, which is very paranoid, the government is out to get them. And just the fact that the president, who they've been saying is out to take their guns away for years and this president has never done a thing to take anybody's gun away, the fact that he is going to call for some ludicrously reasonable measures to try to keep certain guns out of the hands of certain people and to allow the federal government to know who's got them. Oh, shit. I can't remember where that sentence started. And here's why. I don't want you to think that was another senior moment. Here's why. I'm looking outside. You can't even see the tops of the buildings. Is that fog or is that just a low ceiling? Or wouldn't that be the same thing? I have no idea either. And then there's like this smoke pouring out of... It's just like... It looks scary out there. It looks forbidding and it looks somewhat depressing. So anyway, I couldn't remember where that one had begun. It got a little convoluted and long. Speaking about convoluted and long and totally off the subject, but I just remembered. So I went and saw Zero Dark 30? 40? 30? What the hell does that mean?
Code, probably.
It's some kind of a code? I don't think it was addressed in the movie itself. Anyway, I didn't like it very much. It wasn't anywhere near as good as Catherine Bigelow's Hurt Locker, which was an incredible movie. It was difficult to watch. It was at times boring. The torture scenes were horrific. I mean, they could have been worse, but most unpleasant because the people who were torturing were Americans, and you're not used to see. I mean, movies you generally see where people are being tortured by these nasty, interrogators. The nasty interrogators are the bad guys, and so there's like a lot of cognitive dissonance that goes on when you realize that, oh no, see, the bad guys are the guys getting tortured, and we're the good guys, but we're torturing, and I'm having trouble. I found it difficult to follow. I found it, I don't understand why everybody's raving about that movie. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. Oh, except this. I even almost fell asleep during it. That's how boring I thought it was. My eyes closed a few times. They did. In the audience, toward the end, when they finally find where Osama bin Laden is and we get to the recreation of the raid in which he was killed, I mean, that's interesting because I'm assuming that was done pretty much as it unfolded. That was interesting to watch, I guess. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold, not to mention make me want to punch somebody out. Every time I'm sitting in the same row with a woman, that every time in the movie an American killed a person, this woman would laugh. She would, ha, ha, like that. I mean, there were times when they'd be shooting like a woman or something. I mean, this woman would like startled and, come out of a room and poof, and this woman is reveling. I mean, reveling. It was so Shocking. It was so shocking. So anyway, I left that movie sort of really rattled. Because in it, we were the torturers were Americans, and I watched with a bunch of Americans, one of whom, a young woman, was delighting in the killing of other people. I don't know. It was scary. So talking about Americans killing and Americans being killed and all that, that's what the president's going to be talking about. Back to gun control. I digress all over the place. And I don't know if you've seen the new NRA ad. It's unbelievable. It pulls the president's children into the nastiness of this debate, and it has these dark pictures and some. I'm assuming you've seen this, right? Some of the intonation from the narrator in this 30-second spot is the following: Are the president's kids more important than yours? Then why is he skeptical about putting armed security in our schools when his kids are protected by armed guards at their school? This ad is replete with pictures of apparently the enemies of American freedom, according to the NRA, and that would be the president, the vice president, New York Mayor Bloomberg, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and for some reason, Dick Gregory. I found out later that I guess Dick Gregory's kids go to the same school as the president's. Here's another line from the NRA ad. Mr. Obama demands the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes. But is he just another elitist hypocrite when it comes to a fair share of security, protection for their kids, and gun-free zones for ours? Oh, jeez. Well, frankly, Mr. NRA, I would like a gun-free zone for mine. And if you think Americans want their kids secured by armed guards like the president's poor kids are every minute of their lives, you're out of your mind. I hate these people. I hate them. I can't help it. I hate them. So Obama's going to supposedly call for an end of the sales of certain automatic rifles and high-capacity ammunition clips, which, of course, requires congressional approval. So because they're Republicans in Congress, forget it. Although I heard former Governor Rendell suggesting that, the Republicans that represent the suburban areas of Philly, those Republicans in the House, he said, would have to think for a long time whether or not they should vote against any such recommendation, because they are representing voters who tend to look with some horror upon the blatherings of the NRA. But I still think the odds of it getting through with this current House are, obviously negligible. He's apparently going to call to require background checks. Oh, that's so radical. 40% of the guns that trade hands in this country, the person on the receiving end isn't subjected to no background check. Whatever. He's also apparently going to propose, and anything he proposes, they will oppose, as you know, a plan to have the people who say, hey, I just have this thing to target shoot. That's my hobby. That's how I have fun. And so the proposal is, okay, if that's what it's for, then how about keeping your guns at the target ranges rather than taking them home with you, where they are more likely to fall into the wrong hands. So sort of, I think he's going to be all over the place there. Anyway, I have, no matter what the president does or suggests or what ends up happening, there are already law enforcement officers around the country who are saying they will refuse to enforce any federal law that in any way, in their mind, violates the Second Amendment. And I'm looking at a picture of a smiling law enforcement officer from Oregon. He's the sheriff of Lynn County. And he says he ain't going to enforce any federal regulation that offends the constitutional rights of the citizens of the country. And he is hardly alone. So you're I don't know. I'm being told 0 dark 30 means 12:30 a.m. Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. But I mean, I found the movie dense in a lot of ways. You don't like particularly anybody in it. You don't get drawn into any character. And it's very hard to follow what it is they're talking about and who they're looking for. And I found it stultifyingly dull. I really did. Why is that considered a good movie? Don't get me started again. I mean, there's one lousy movie out there after another. One of the ones, as I've said before, that I enjoyed the most was Django Unchained. What a riot. That's a funny movie. And if you don't realize it's a comedy, then you don't get it. And it's a send-up of all of those spaghetti westerns. I mean, you could tell from the minute the opening credits start. Oh, well. Is my guest here? She doesn't seem to be, right? So I'm just trying to figure out. Let's get a break in here. Helen Gerhardt is supposed to join us shortly. And I do want to talk more, though, about guns. I want to talk about this secession movement, because you won't believe what the New York Times is reporting today in regard to the secessionists in Texas and the warm reception they received from state higher-ups just yesterday. I don't know. Let us not lose our capacity to find humor, however dark, in whatever it is we've got to deal with. I'll be right back.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Lynn Cullen Live and Panera Bread celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King.
50 years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. These words of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. were heard by the 250,000 demonstrators who marched on Washington August 28, 1963. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. The day was a personal victory for King. His speech made his voice familiar to the world and lives today as one of the most moving orations of our time.
Countdown to King, brought to you by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health, and Lynn Cullen Live.
Well, I'll tell you what. This president has certainly been a magnet for the loons. He's also been a magnet for so many other Americans, and I mean that in a positive way. And one of the more historic things that you are free to attend and witness is the inauguration of this historic president and his presidency. That inauguration occurs next Monday, which is, in fact, Martin Luther King Day. And it is a national holiday. And so your kids very well may have the day off. And I can't think of anything more wonderful than getting on a bus, heading to the inauguration, and letting your children witness history. DeBolt Unlimited is taking a bus, and you're invited. $89 gets you there and back on Monday and gets you a commemorative Metro ticket and gets you an all-you-can-eat dinner on the way back home. There are 5 pickup places that the bus will come and get you. There's Robinson, Homestead, Oakland, Monroeville, and New Stanton. This is the same bus company that took us all to, to D.C. for the Sanity Rally. Great buses. They know what they're doing. Got this down like that. You're in good hands. And you'll be free for about 6 hours in D.C. to attend whatever inaugural events you want. It sounds like a wonderful idea. How about getting on the bus? Here's a phone number where you can make your reservation, and you need to do it now, obviously. We're talking about Monday. 1-800-4, the numeral 4, DEBOLT, D-E-B-O-L-T. You can look online as well at tours at DeBoltUnlimited.com. Think about it.
Today, My Care Navigator forwarded my medical records and freed my mind for other things.
Introducing My Care Navigator, your 24/7 healthcare co-pilot, new from Highmark.
My Care Navigator found me the ideal specialist. Less work for me.
My Care Navigator makes it easier to navigate the system. Call 1-888-BLUE-428 to connect with yours today. Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield is an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association.
Pittsburgh City Paper's annual winter guide is available now. Pick up one today for the best wintertime events in Western PA. Plus, Gin Blossoms, Morrissey, and Chris Webby. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
All right, we are back. I'm going to go check and see if our guest is cooling her heels in what constitutes a green room here. I have heard people say that the polls taken after Newtown show that the American public is actually not too excited about a lot of gun control issues that are being proffered. Okay. But a new poll, Pew Research poll, shows that it's amazing. It's as close as it is. By a 51 to 45% margin, Americans say it is more important to control gun ownership than to protect gun rights. Now that's a shift in the right direction. And an even higher margin, 52% to 35%, with I guess those not, that doesn't add up to 100. Other people simply not going either way, shows that the public is much more likely to support gun control after last month's massacre, as opposed to the month before massacre and the month before that's massacre and the month before that's massacre. We'll see. So there was this little item I saw a few days ago, and it said that U.S. Senator Joe Manchin, that'd be West Virginia, used to be the governor there, who's a Democrat supposedly, who did not support President Obama's reelection. It says here that he is joining Senator McCain in trying to form a bipartisan commission to look into ways to address the nation's, quote, culture of violence, end quote. Now, I laughed out loud when I read that, simply because the culture of violence manifests itself in many ways, and heaven knows we do live in a culture of violence. It manifests itself. I mean, you can't get away from it. It's everywhere. And one of the places it was in West Virginia, when the then governor, Joe Manchin, showed his lack of support for a certain measure that was coming up in the legislature by aiming a gun at it and shooting it full of holes. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. So a governor who wanted to show his disagreement with something thought that a good way to do that would be to take a gun out and shoot this piece of paper, to shoot this idea. And this is the guy who now wants to talk about how do we get out of this culture of violence. Well, obviously, one way you could do that, Senator now Manchin, is by addressing issues, as little preschool kids would say, with words, not fists, with words. And when you show that the way you deal with something you don't like is to point a gun and shoot it, you got, come on. You're very much part and parcel of what's wrong. Jesus, God almighty. All right. Chuck is telling us that Piers Morgan's show last night was in the format of a town hall meeting, and the pro-gun folks were well represented. His guest was a chief journalist for something called the Tea Party News. A guy named Scotty Hughes. Oh, that's a woman named Scotty Hughes? And she defended her reasoning for having a high-capacity assault weapon thusly. Ms. Hughes. Let's look through history. Right now, we might like our government, but you've got Cambodia, you've got Russia, you've got Germany, governments go corrupt. I have the right to be able to own a gun just in case. We don't know what's going to happen. Today we might have a bright, sunny America, but who's to say what's going to happen? What? Is she going to blow in here? Now, I got to tell you, this, and Chuck says, this is the kind of mentality we're dealing with here. Stop him, though. Excuse me. My guest is here, but we want to just stop. We'll get to her. Okay, this is, and this is true. This is what their argument is. But what we're seeing now is that a sizable percentage of these gun nuts, and I'm not calling everybody who has a gun nut. You know who I'm talking about. And I'm certainly talking about Wayne LaPierre. The thing now is we have millions upon millions upon millions of these gun nuts now in this country who, as I was alluding to at the beginning of the show, are just about ready to declare that their government is in fact corrupt and has gone bad and needs to be, well, defended against. There are millions, including the sheriff I was telling you about and all the other sheriffs around, who are openly now flouting, saying they will flout the laws that they are sworn to protect because they don't like these laws. The whole idea of our country was that we would be a nation of law, not vigilantism. The whole idea of the United States was that we stick together through thick and thin. We stick together when the president is not the guy we voted for. We stick together when the Congress passes laws we don't agree with. We stick together. These people don't get this. They have refused, and they did it also with Clinton. There's a whole cadre that refuses to acknowledge the credibility of certain presidents because, well, they didn't vote for him. I find these people un-American at heart, and yet they think they're patriots. Another reason to be somewhat concerned. So, you know, when all was said and done with that little flurry upon Obama's reelection of attempts by certain nuts in certain states to petition the government for, you know, to be able to secede from it, you know that. The effort in Texas was particularly intense. And I guess over 125,000 people. I've got a call. Hello.
Hey, Lynn, real quick. These people think they're going to defend themselves from our government.
Yeah.
The military will make them like little piss ants. I mean, it's crazy to think that way, that you could defend yourself over the military of the U.S. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Have a
hello.
good day.
Thank you. You too. Yeah, but they're going to go out fighting, and they're going out in a blaze of glory, okay? That's what they're going to go out that way, with their heads held high right before they're blown off. I don't know. I mean, obviously you are correct. I would think that and these are the same people that generally vote for the party that has continued to make the United States the nation on earth with the most lethal military and the most lethal weapons available to it. So it's odd, isn't it, that these are the folks that vote for the Republicans that can't give the Pentagon enough money, and yet these are the folks that now purport to, I guess, only pledge allegiance to the country when the president is of their party I mean, that does seem to be the case, doesn't it? And these are the people who see as illegitimate any president and administration which they do not agree with. And that's when they run out and buy more and more guns, because they live in the paranoid universe where if they didn't vote for that guy, and these are Democrats, which are the same as commies, which gets you really close to, you know, like Mao Zedong and whatever, and Adolf Hitler, because fascists and commies sort of blend in their heads too. The fact is these people really don't agree with the whole idea of the United States of America as it was founded. They don't, but they're too stupid to know it. Anyway, so over 125,000 Texans bothered to sign that petition on the White House website. They did get a answer. And here is some of what they were told. First of all, the answer was no, you cannot secede. But some of what was said to these idiots is, hey guys, see, our founding fathers established the Constitution of the United States in order to form a more perfect union through the hard and frustrating but necessary work of self-government. They enshrined in that document the right to change our national government through the power of the ballot. Are you sure that that's not a typo? Are you sure ballot isn't that supposed to be bullet? See, these people think you're supposed to change the power of the bullet. No, but it's ballot. No U and A. Ballot, guys. Maybe that's where they got mixed up. But here's the White House trying to teach them. No. The Founding Fathers enshrined the Constitution, in the Constitution, the right to change your government through a ballot. A right that generations of Americans have, in fact, fought to secure for all. They did not enshrine the right to change the government by a bullet. And in the balloting, if your side falls short, guess what? Suck it up and live with it and live to fight, figuratively, another day. Anyway, the White House told these idiots that the Founding Fathers did not provide a right to walk away. Meanwhile, the folks behind the Texas petition are serious. They're not giving up. And in fact, on the very day that the new Texas legislature was sworn in, a whole big group of them, the secessionists in Texas, were granted a meeting with the lieutenant governor of Texas. And we learned this when George W. ran the first time. The lieutenant governor in Texas actually has more power than the governor. Don't ask why, but of course, I'll give you a quick answer. Because it's Texas. Okay. The Texas nationalist movement met with Republican leaders, including the lieutenant governor, in a sign that ideas that were once considered radical and even laughable and even seditious have found support in very high places. They met for over an hour. This is the new lieutenant governor, I believe. So this is what he does his first day in office. He meets for an hour with lunatics and giving them credibility, obviously, in the process. Dear Lord, oh well. What else we got here? Oh, no. And then Christiane Amanpour had a piece in which she noted, and this is, somehow this doesn't get through to people, but terrorist attacks, okay, around the world, not just Americans. Terrorist attacks, the year that we've got numbers to do this with is 2010. Terrorist attacks worldwide took the lives of 13,186 people on this planet. In 1 year, 13,186 people were killed by terrorists. Yeah. Well, in 2010, in America alone, we culled 31,672 people with our guns. Americans killed 31,000 plus of their own in the same year that the big bad terrorists only managed to kill 13,000 worldwide. And, of course, Republicans have wanted to do everything and anything, and Democrats too, to battle these terrorists, right? I saw it in the movie Zero Dark, whatever the hell it is, 30. Yeah. They will spend anything they can get their hands on. And at the same time, so many more Americans are dying not at the hands of terrorists, but at the hands of other Americans. And what has our government done about that? Addressing that security issue? Well, you know, nothing. American taxpayers have spent more than $500 billion on Homeland Security since 9/11. And yet we're very not safe. Why? Because of the guns we have here. It's unbelievable. But don't tell that to the gun fetish. Don't tell that. Don't inject troubling pieces of quantifiable reality into the discussion, because they can't deal with it. They won't acknowledge it. If you start looking at how are Americans dying, why are we dying, what is our biggest threat, what are the threats to our children, guess what? We are the threat to our children. Our culture, our laws, our inability to be realistic about you can't fix what you can't face. Simple as that. So the president's going to start trying the fix stage today. But we ain't going to get anywhere if we can't agree on what it is we face, and that's the problem. And that's where these differing universes pop back in. Because we ain't living in the same reality. And there's hundreds of millions, tens of millions of Americans who cannot face the reality. Consequently, we will not be able to fix it. Unless we, the ones who can face it, get serious. Dig in. Okay, I'm taking a break.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on meals from your favorite local restaurants, museums, and shows. This week only, get discounts up to 20% on gift cards to P.F. Chang's. Supplies are limited. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
Ooh, yes. I want to remind you again that you can go to the inauguration, and we've got a way for you to do it easily. Buses leaving from Pittsburgh, picking you up the day of the inauguration, which is Martin Luther King Day. That's Monday. They'll pick you up in the morning in Robinson, in Homestead, in Oakland, in Monroeville. They'll give you the times. You get on the bus, go back to sleep if you wanted. They'll take you all the way. They'll stop for breakfast, take you to D.C., let you loose for 5-6 hours to enjoy any inaugural festivities you want, including watching the historic swearing in of Barack Hussein Obama. And then they'll take you back home, and they'll stop somewhere in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and let you eat all you can eat. No cost to you. It's included in the cost of your ticket, $89. And you're home by 10:30 Monday night. Take your kids. Let them witness history. Let you witness history. Why don't you do it right away? Because, limited space available. Here's the phone number, 1-800-4-DEBOLT, D-E-B-O-L-T, 1-800-433-2658, another possibility, or email tours@DeBoltUnlimited.com.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a pep talk that can motivate you.
Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to.
You can improve your future. Now get your game face on and take the first step towards a better life. Hurry up. Don't make me repeat myself.
Whatever level of motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org for your pep talk and for free classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education, brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Yes, and here, I'm sorry. God, I got to stop. I was saying to somebody the other day, I've got to stop screaming at people. And I'm not screaming, I just can't help it.
Don't you scream at me.
I won't. And what makes you think I am? That's Helen Gerhardt. She's been here before in her guise as a veteran of the United States. But she is here today as a tireless worker for sanity in public transit funding. We were talking about sanity and guns before you came. And she is a member of Pittsburghers for Public Transit. And so bring us up to date. What's going on? They're always scaring the bejeebers out of you. And then somehow the buses are there. But that's for me. But some people, the buses are already gone. I mean, what?
Yeah,
so how bad is it?
Since 2007, a total of 30% of our transit service has been cut. So service reductions and complete elimination of bus lines that have really affected many people's lives. So many people in the ring suburbs no longer have good service. Many people in our minority communities and low-income communities have been cut off.
Well, why would they cut the very places where people need the service the most? Is it because there's not a
dedicated source of state funding that's tied to inflation? The funds were connected to the gas tax. And as vehicles have become more efficient, then the revenues that support our mass transit system and that support our urban economies, which support the tax base for the entire state and the state budget, all of that has gone down. So mass transit is essential to the health of our entire state. Part of the health of this community, these taxes right here in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia help support the roads and bridges all across rural Pennsylvania as well. So not only would further cuts be a really devastating blow to our city, to the urban communities that ride them all the time, it would really devastate those drivers out there all across the state.
Yeah, but somehow the drivers don't understand that.
That's the message we got to get out. So many people don't see that connection. So the bulk of the population is in those two big cities.
Okay, so most of the taxpayers are living in Philly and in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And you're saying if those two economies are going to be harmed or constricted as a result of people, not being able to get to work?
Right. So looking across patterns across the world, healthy transit systems are strongly connected to healthy urban economies.
Duh.
As well as reduction of gridlock and pollution and all these parking costs. I've talked to so many people out on the streets who moved here, the young urban professionals, as well as workers of across all walks of life that moved here because my house will be next to a bus stop, and then
the buses
were cut.
Well, it's a mindset, and it's a political football, it seems. And why do you think Republicans in general, is it because their constituents tend to be in rural areas where public transportation is relatively non-existent, and also in suburban areas where they're under the illusion that everybody has a car? Is that why?
Every single elected official is always somewhat of an amateur, right? And if there's the election cycle. So if people are not educated, whether that's legislators or the inhabitants of rural Pennsylvania, they don't see that connection. That connection, it's a matter of public education and really getting the information out there so that they can see that we are indeed interdependent. That this split, this divide between the middle of the Pennsylvania and the these urban areas, it's an illusion. We really are united in our common interest to have a healthy transportation system.
Okay, so remind everybody, because I thought we just dodged the last crisis in a way.
That was largely because of enormous sacrifices by transit workers. So the ATU has given many millions in concessions, 60 million last year alone. And so, they will no longer have health care 3 years after they retire. They're paying 10.5% of their paycheck into their pensions. So the myth that they're getting these lucrative pensions, they are paying for those pensions. And many of, they're professionals. It takes many hundreds of hours of training to drive a bus in these crazy streets, up these hills and around these corners, and with these traffic and these changing lanes. So there's a host of studies that show that if you give people a decent wage, and it starts here at $16.05, it tops out at $24.50. That's a basic middle class living wage. That means you can. Yeah, it means you can maybe put your kids through college, right? So you need to give a professional base to give people incentive to stay with this incredibly stressful job. Port Authority has become one of the most efficient transit systems in the country. They have really cut to the bone on all levels, and so both the ATU and Port Authority have really done their part in terms of becoming lean and streamlined. In fact, in some ways, we are, as a population in the city, we're suffering from that because now bus drivers have to make many more stops with fewer buses. So a bus route that used to take 12 trips around has to do it in 9. So they're constantly behind. There's no way they can really beat the clock so much of the time. And so that when they're late, that means that other people are going to be late to their workplaces, which then they decide, well, maybe I shouldn't take the bus, which then cuts down their ridership, which cuts down the revenue. So the way to really create a healthy transit system is to give it a good, solid base of sustainable funding.
And that's not the gas tax because that, it's sort of like the cigarette tax. States used to just make money hand over fist on that, but then people stop smoking as much, right?
Yep.
And now people are trying to get more gas mileage, and they're maybe not filling up as much. So, right, if that was the only dedicated revenue that was funding mass transit, it's going down.
Yeah, we actually become penalized as a society
for doing the right thing.
Well,
then so the incentives are all screwed up. There's nothing. This doesn't make any sense. What is Governor Corbett suggesting for, preventing this annual, it seems, threat of losing transit?
Well, he appointed a transit commission, which has come up with a host of solutions.
Yeah.
Some of which are very sound. They're actually taxes on congestion, that can actually reduce traffic congestion. But one of our big concerns is Corbett's emphasis on privatization, which, of course, we've seen with his lottery, privatizing our lottery, basically announcing the award of the contract to a British company.
Yeah. You know what?
So
there's a reason that government ends up doing certain things and private industry doesn't, because it's not necessarily profitable. Private industry wants to make a profit, right?
Right. Exactly.
So if we hand it over to private folks, well, they're not going to be inclined to serve smaller areas or far-flung communities,
exactly.
Right? They're going to go where the money is.
Yes, there's a woman named Lynn Cullen who did a study. She reviewed the research from all over the nation, looking at what happens when private companies take over mass transit systems. There are costs to quality of service, to maintaining equipment, The accident rate goes way up.
Why would that be?
Congestion goes up because they're trying to cut costs wherever they can to make their bottom line. For a profit company, their responsibility is, quote, to their shareholders, not to the public that mass transit system serves. They compete with each other rather than integrating and working together as, to serve that community as a whole. They don't look at the benefits to the economy throughout the system. They look at their own pocketbook.
That's right. So, and the governor is, again, this is his idea, privatize?
Well,
how does that
yes, he put together a privatization panel, which is mainly, there are 24 members, 70% of them are major donors to his campaigns, and they stand to benefit from privatization. There's no labor represented on that panel, and very shocked, the Secretary of Transportation seems like a very solid supporter of mass transit. But the governor has a history in a whole host of arenas of pay to play. You put in the cash, and you're going to be seeing a return on what I do with my office. That is corruption. He has encouraged privateering of so many of our essential public services, things that we, as a voting public, need to have some say in. What is also a really clear pattern with these private contracts is that the public is left out again and again. Legislators are often rushed to if you look at Act 88, which enabled private-public partnerships, the legislature, if they have a say in any of these contracts, they have 9 to 19 days to do so. And we're talking about contracts that are this thick with incredibly complex legal jargon that they don't have time to read.
So the even the people, let alone the people's representatives, never have a place at the table.
Right. So in Chicago, Rahm Emanuel pushed through the leasing of their parking meters.
That's right, and it's been a disaster.
It has. So now they can't even close down a street to fix the street without paying big bucks to that corporation for the revenue lost during the repairs. So hundreds of thousands of dollars have been paid to companies that are mainly overseas. If Chicago wants to repave a street in which there are parking meters, they have to now pay this company whose meters will not be accessible for. Right. So they don't have the same kinds of. They don't have the street festivals and fairs that they used to have.
Because you would have to pay.
Because you'd have to cut.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. Oh, right here in Pennsylvania, there was a deal where a large portion of our highway system was going to be leased to companies overseas. And in some cases, thank God that deal fell through. But in other places where such toll roads have become privatized, even during national disasters, when people are trying to get away from a hurricane and people are just being waved through so they don't pay the tolls, the state then has to pay the private company for the lost profit. That means there's also non-compete clauses, which means the roads around the toll highway or the transit system around the highway, if states and cities make improvements to those roads that then compete with the amount of toll.
Okay, so I want to avoid the toll road, so I'm going over to that parallel little county road that I used to take, because actually I can do that.
Or you take the bus instead.
Or I take the bus?
Yes.
Then what if
the company does not make the projected profits,
we have to make up the difference, the taxpayers?
Many states have had to make up the difference. So that means that there's a strong incentive not to build up a healthy transit system, not to improve your own roads. And this has been shown again and again.
This is what privatization begets.
Absolutely.
Rich capitalists and depleted taxpayer coffers.
Right. I mean, we are not anti-business. We are looking for a fair and equitable system, which means that private companies should not be given quasi-governmental powers over vital public infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So they are, in fact, the power of the voter is being taken away, and it's being, being robbed by contracts.
In the time we have left, a few minutes, what would your organization, Pittsburghers for Public Transit, in your dream world, in your fantasy world, how do you think public transit should work in Pennsylvania, and how should it be funded?
It should be a public. There are cities in Europe where public transit is free, and it is. And you see the health of the cities. You see multimodal transportation, bikes, walkways, where the pedestrians are given precedence, and buses. And those are vital cities. The businesses are doing beautifully.
Been there.
So many small and medium-sized businesses are so transit dependent for their customers, for their workers. Many of our biggest corporations, an incredible percentage of Highmark employees, UPMC employees, that supposed charity that is benefiting from our infrastructure is not paying its fair share. So there needs to be fair share contributions from corporations
whose workers require
exactly.
Yeah,
we have one of the most generous tax codes to corporations. 70% of corporations don't pay any income tax in this state, partially due to some of Corbett's past, he has made it much, much easier for corporations to get those kinds of tax breaks. So there needs to be fair share contribution by all who benefit from the infrastructure. There needs to be a real dedication to public input and control over, the infrastructure that affects those communities. Our elected officials need to take the responsibility of helping to manage, of creating the policy that allows us to manage and integrate all our forms of transportation so we can have healthy communities and economies. That means at this point, because money plays such a big role in our electoral politics and our daily functioning.
Pay to play, Helen.
Yes, that means that people have to get together, they have to work together, they have to be very vocal. There's also good data that shows that a politician who's faced with money over here and a whole bunch of their voters saying, you do the right thing, that they will go with the voters. But it requires concerted, dedicated, long-term effort. So that's what Pittsburghers for Public Transit is all about. We bring together riders and drivers. We're doing volunteer training with riders and drivers together so they can get to know each other, so they can stop being divided by a system which plays them against each other. Communities in this city are being played against each other because of race and class. We need to know each other and work together. So we just got a Sprout grant. We're going to be collecting stories all over this community, and they're going to be here at the City Paper blog.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and sometimes in the paper and radio, all sorts of venues so that you can really hear the impacts of the transit on people's lives and what people envision for the future. Our partner PCRG is putting together a wiki so people can get their stories up there as well. But we don't want the digital divide to keep people out. So we're actually out there in the buses meeting people. We're recording stories at various community centers around the city.
Stories about
the role that the bus plays in their life, the heyday of the bus system, when it was healthy, when we had one of the best bus systems in the country, and their vision of what they want to see, the changes, the more transit, not less, bringing back the buses, making the system healthier, supporting the workers that give so much of their lives to really getting us where we need to go. So we are kicking off our legislative campaign and our direct organizing campaign next week on the 22nd.
Okay.
And we'll be having a volunteer training on January 27th. There will be regular volunteer trainings. So, and you don't have to have any experience. You can come, learn about the transit system and the crisis and what you can do, and then how you can engage with your neighbors, both on the buses and along the bus stops, with small businesses, with with larger businesses, really engaging the public across all walks of life to say, let's get together, let's go to Harrisburg on February the 11th. We're going to be filling Port Authority buses, and there's going to be a big rally with groups from all around the country, a strong coalition. TWU, the Transit Workers Union in Philadelphia. A whole wide range. Americans for Transit will be there with Andrew Austin. So a very wide range of groups will be there to say, in this we are absolutely unified. We need healthy mass transit for us.
Tell us your website so people can get all this.
It's pittsburghfortransit.org.
Okay, and that's all spelled out.
Pittsburghfortransit.org.
Head over to that website, and I'm sure all this...
Yes, and here's my number.
Oh.
412.
All right.
518 7387. And the email is info@pittsburghfortransit.org.
Okay.
So please come and join us. Our general membership meeting is this Saturday from 10 to 11:30. You are welcome. Please come and help plan what you want to see us do. This is a volunteer-driven organization, and we take the input of our incredibly committed, dedicated, hardworking volunteers. I can't tell you how lucky I feel to be working with the people.
You do. That's wonderful.
Yes, yep.
Well, God bless you all. As a beleaguered rider myself, and I'm not beleaguered at all. I just so appreciate.
I have had such a good time on the buses.
I know. It's true. People don't realize.
Heard so many stories.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing. So when people tell their stories, Bricolage Production Company will help. They're going to develop interactive theater events so people get to act out their stories as well. So if you have a yen for amateur theater, if you've always wanted to do it, please come and help tell our stories.
Wow, so bricolage is involved, and that's good stuff. Wow, you guys are thinking outside that box. I love it. Helen Gerhardt, you're something. Okay, you guys, tomorrow, Tom Sokolowski, he's something too. Find your way through the pea soup, and talk at you again tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.